Hello and welcome back to the studio. Today's Bob Ross classic painting is Angler's Haven. I'm going to use a 1-inch brush to demonstrate how you can paint better clouds and bushes. But this painting has an alter ego, Angler's Hell. It's a painting full of mud from start to finish. So I remade this painting, captured the full horror of making mud. Be sure to watch the end of this painting and try not to have nightmares, but Angler's Hell will follow shortly after. Happy painting, people. So here's my canvas. It's 16 inches by 20 and I have it set as a portrait. That means it's upright as opposed to lengthways. You can see at the sides there's a couple of little map pins. These remind me where the horizon line should be, and I used a 1-inch brush to measure up from the bottom of the canvas, on either side. Plenty of room for a mountain. For today's painting, I'm going to be using this Bob Ross liquid white oil paint, and this is going to go in the sky, behind the mountain, and in the lower section where the water is, I'm going to be using Bob Ross liquid black oil paint. So down below the horizon line. For my brushes, I'm going to be using two Bob Ross 1-inch landscape brushes. One on the right, this one is a little older, a bit more worn down, but this one's lovely and soft and perfect for highlighting. I also have a filbert brush, which I ended up not using, a fan brush and a liner brush, and of course a Bob Ross palette knife. I'm going to start out with liquid white. I keep it in this small pot for ease of use. I'm using my old brush and I just start by painting sections. Below the pins will be liquid black. We want a thin, even coat of liquid white, but if you're not sure, I'll drop a link in the description down below for a video where I show you how to use it properly. I finish off with long, flat, even strokes side to side, and I just use a little touch test. I don't want too much. Now, let's do the black. Give this brush a good dry clean. In other words, you want to squeeze out all of the liquid white that you can. Give it a twirl. Now, straight into the liquid black. This time I'm going to use it straight from the pot. I don't need very much. And once again, I only need a thin, even coat. Where I come up against the white, I'll blend them together to produce sort of a soft grey colour. Just a nice transition, and it's right on that pin line. The bottom half I want to be nice and dense and dark. I'll be overpainting this with some Prussian blue and some phthalo green later on. Let's have a look at my palette. There's quite a lot of colours for this painting and I'll list them down below in the description. But the first one is going to be phthalo blue. It's a lovely sparkly bright blue colour, perfect for a mountain scene. And as you see, I'm using my nice 1-inch brush and I tap it well into that paint. I start in the corners at the top and I'll let the colour fade as we come down towards the horizon line. Next, a little bit of planning. I know that somewhere in this background I want a nice big mountain. I don't want to put my mountain over the top of my clouds, so scratch on the design and that way you see how much room you've got left for those clouds. Top tip here, pay special attention to how I pull my brush open to load the white paint. I'm always pulling my paintbrush in one direction to open up the bristles. That's essential for good clouds. Just lay your brush against the canvas at a slight angle and give it a good tap. I just want to leave the bright edge of a cloud and the base and the middle of the cloud, I can let that fade into the background blue sky. This is one of the simplest ways of creating lovely soft fluffy clouds for your paintings. So make sure you give it a try. Don't forget, save that lovely bright edge. Now, top tip, stand back from your canvas. I can't stress this enough. Make sure you get well away from your painting and see if you need to make any adjustments. I just want to brighten this corner a little bit more. There. Just one more little step, which is to blend out this sky. I want to remove some of the little brush marks from all the tapping. Now, time for a mountain. I'm going to take some of this phthalo blue, a little bit of the black, some Van Dyke brown, and a little touch of crimson. And I want to mix these together to make a lovely deep inky blue colour. You can see I turn the paint over several times, and this is the result. A lovely strong deep blue colour. Take your palette knife and slide up and gather up a little roll of that paint, and then with firm pressure I want to just press this paint down into my canvas. Top tip here, remember this colour is only to stain the canvas. I don't want to have a great big thick chunk of it to try and highlight over. As you can see, that firm pressure really forces it down into the canvas, and I want this mountain to be sort of further back into the distance, so I want it to be going off the side of the canvas well above the horizon line. Having scraped off all that surplus dark paint, I now just want to brush out what's left. See how I lay my brush into the angles of the mountain and just pull to the sides. I want to thin down this paint as much as I can to make my mountain look distant, with a soft, misty lower edge. Now I'm going to take my palette knife, I'm going to divide my mountain into sections. Let's say there's a ridge here, and snow to the left is in highlight, snow to the right is in shadow. Let's mix up some highlight. I'm going to take some titanium white, maybe just a tiny dot of red just to warm it up slightly, and for my shadow colour I'm going to be using some more titanium white, and this time a little bit of the phthalo blue. I might even grey it down a tiny bit more. Yeah, let's take a little bit of black with that. Just grey it down a shade. Now these colours look a little bit too similar, so I'm going to make my shadow side a little bit greyer still. It's important you have 3 distinct colours on your mountains. Take my palette knife, slide up and pick up a nice neat roll of the titanium white highlight. I'm going to start out with the point of my knife to the point of the mountain and just touch a nice light grip on the palette knife and just let the blade of the knife glide across the surface of the mountain. The idea is to apply no pressure and to allow the paint to break and create this lovely design, so it looks like you've got some rocky stony outcrops amongst all the snow. Now for the shadow side of my mountain. I've loaded my palette knife with that blue-grey colour, and well, I think you'll see that again these colours are too similar. The shadow side and the highlight side are too close in value. I've picked up a little bit more blue, just marble mixed it through my paint. That gives me a better contrast between highlights and shadows, and I still have some of my original mountain colour peeking through. So each of my mountains has 3 distinct colours: the original base colour, a highlight and a shadow. This line looks a little bit straight, so maybe I'll come back in and just change things a little bit. Learning how to master all the tools at your disposal, like a palette knife, will greatly enhance your confidence. So don't be afraid to play with your paintings. Making changes and having some happy accidents along the way is all part of learning to paint. Now, using my 1-inch brush, I just want to tap out any little marks left by my palette knife. This is the final softening of the base of my mountain. After this, we can move in to the midground. I'm going to use what's left of my mountain mix to start off the underpainting for the midground. I add some sap green to it. I want a really good dark foresty green colour like this. I'm going to use my 1-inch brush again, and notice how I press my brush down into the paint. I give it a little tap and make sure you really open up the bristles when you do this. Again, it's essential to make sure your brush is open and lacy. Now, time to position some trees at the side of my canvas. I want one on the right here that's a little bit bigger than the mountain, so that covers up the little ragged edge, and one on the other side as well. And you can see that I've just put in a couple of suggestions first, and I'll plan out roughly where I want the rest of them to fall. So I just do this lightly, not too much paint to start with, and you can always make subtle changes, but once you start putting on lots of dark colour, it's much harder to change your mind. So again, a little bit of planning really helps. I've made sure my trees are all slightly different sizes and shapes, and now I think I'm happy enough to actually fill this in with my dark green colour. Top tip here to painting better bushes is to make sure this underpainting colour is very firm and dry. You don't need lots of it, it just must be nice and dark. I'm going to drop in the suggestion of a few branches and tree stumps. I've got some titanium white with a little bit of the dark sienna and just a couple of drops of odorless thinners. See how nice and juicy that paint is. Hopefully it'll flow nicely over this dark green. Just add a few here and there. Time for some highlights. I've dry cleaned my 1-inch brush very well. Once again, notice how I pull my brush to open the bristles. The highlight colours are thinner and oilier than the dark green underpaint. You can see the colour is very shiny on the palette. As I press to open my brush, I want the bristles to be open and lacy and heavily loaded with paint. The light is coming strongly from the left hand side. We know that from the way we've highlighted the mountain. And pay special attention to how gently I touch my canvas. I just want to offer the brush to the painting. Reload frequently. In that little dark area there, I'm going to pop in a fresh little highlight. It's just a very gentle touch. If you go back over it 2 or 3 times, you start mixing mud. And I've done that plenty of times, and I bet you have too. So always gentle. Notice also how much my canvas moves. I'm painting on a canvas which is stretched and it's got a bit of tension to it, but it means that every time I touch with the brush, the canvas gives a little. It's like painting on a drum. You can paint on canvas boards, but they tend to be rather hard and unyielding and can make painting better clouds and bushes difficult. Probably one of the most important things to do is stop. Dry clean your 1-inch brush. Remove all traces of a sort of an olive green drab colour. There it is. That will do nothing for your painting. Also give your palette a tidy up. Fresh, bright, clean colours are what you're really looking for to give your painting that extra special quality. Time for some fir trees. I've taken a fan brush and I'm going to go through some of that lovely dark green colour and load your brush very well, especially on the corners. Pick a good position. Just between these trees looks about perfect, and these are downward trees, so tip your handle down and stay on just one corner. Notice how I just press my brush against the canvas. I want the bristles to make an imprint that looks like little pine needles. Leave a little gap and then carry on working down. I'll add a few more to the background just to add a little extra variety, size and shapes. It's good to have a mixture of different subjects in your painting. For tree trunks, I've added some dark sienna to some of that grubby white paint. Just touch the centre line, just here and there. If it shows up through the highlights, well, it's a bonus. Take care with things like this. My tree has grown until it's in line with the edge of the mountain, and it's sort of, there's a bit of a clash really, like either do I go above the mountain or stay well within. I could have finished down here, but now I'm this high, I think I should go through the top of the mountain. And it makes a big impact. It really pushes your mountain into the background. I think I could go a little bigger still. There. I think that works better. I dry clean my fan brush and I've pulled some of the sap grain into the cad yellow, and notice how I load that paint just on the very tips of the bristles. Also notice how nice and juicy that highlight colour is. Remember, a thin paint will stick to a thick paint. In this case, dark green is lovely and thick. You only really need to touch probably maybe 1/3 of the tree, and predominantly on the left hand side, which is where the sun is shining brightest. I've dry cleaned my 1-inch brush, that's the nice one, and I'm reloading it with again more of this lovely dry dark green colour. You'll notice I rarely wash my brushes, not until I really finish with them. I don't want them to be wet and full of thinners. It will ruin the consistency of the paint. You'll see how easily I get my highlight to stick. Remember, that's nice and soft and wet. Loading your brush and applying the paint gently is the key to making good clouds and better bushes. Let's start working on the water, and for this I'm going to use my old brush. It's been sitting there since I last used it for the liquid black. I'm going to go into Prussian blue and some phthalo green. I forgot to put it out. I'll put it out and you'll see me apply it to my canvas. Now these two colours are very dark and they don't show up very much, and they will readily mix with the liquid black. But I'll do a little test anyway. You can see I got a lovely strong deep colour, perfect for a mountain stream. For my rocky riverbanks, I'm going to combine some Van Dyke brown and some black. I want a good strong dark colour that I can make some highlights stick to. I'll take a small roll of this colour and gently apply it to this background area. I just drag my brush at an angle down to the water's edge, letting the paint break where it wants to break, and you'll be able to do the same with the near side riverbank as well. I want it to look like it's going off into the distance, so I bring the left hand side down a little bit lower and break up any hard edges. Now for some highlight. I still got some of the colour that I used for my tree trunks. That was some grubby white paint with a little sienna. Just let that highlight break as it touches the dark brown black mix. This requires a very gentle touch. I want to reflect those background trees in the water. So I once again dry clean my nice 1-inch brush, and I'm going to go into some of this brighter highlight colour, and just below those rocks, just catch the edge of them, press and pull straight down. The dark watery mix of colours we made will absorb this colour readily, so you might need to go back over it a couple of times. Once you've got that bright splash of colour in, you can gently go across. Only do it once. If you do it twice or 3 times, the colour will just disappear. I've got a little bit of this grubby white paint on my palette knife. It doesn't have any of the sienna mixed in, but it's just the blue-white mix. And here and there, I just want to rub in the suggestion of a few ripples of water. You'll see, later on, I do a little bit more of this and I make a little bit more of a feature of it. I'll repeat the process of adding rocks, reflections, highlights and ripples of water on this right hand side as well. I'll make it a little larger to make it look like this is closer to us in the painting. I'll make this section a little brighter to make it stand out more. I'll add some yellow ochre just for fun. Really experiment with colours. Sometimes unusual combinations really work well. Time for some reflections again, so you know the drill. A little bit of that highlighting colour. Just grab the edge of that riverbank, pull those little rocks down, make a little reflection of them, and again, brush across, but only once. This really gives it a lovely watery effect. As before, I'm going to add some waterlines, but I'm going to go a step further with these ones. I'm going to load a little more of that light paint on my knife. It doesn't have to be pure white, but something quite bright, and really let your knife run and bump and skip. I want to put some energy into this water, so let your knife do the work for you. Think about how water would trickle down a nice stream or a brook. Lots of energy, lots of movement. Really enjoy this process of playing. And as you see, right in front of your eyes, we create the illusion of moving water. A nice touch to bring your painting all together is to put some little highlights right above those rocks. I used my fan brush and a little bit of highlight just to dab in a few little bits of colour. This is what makes your painting stand out. It's been really well considered. Don't leave any of those raw unpainted edges on those rocks. I'll even put a few in the background. That was a bit of luck, leaving those two bushes unhighlighted. Maybe just a happy accident. Yeah, we'll call it that. And to finish off, of course, a few scratchy sticks and twigs, maybe a signature. So there you have it, how to paint better clouds and bushes using a 1-inch brush. But don't go away. As promised, the alter ego of this painting is next. Angler's Hell. Happy painting, people.